They told me my grandmother died. Suddenly, then I found out the funeral had happened 2 weeks ago, and I was never informed because it was only for real family. What I'm about to tell you will shock you to your core. Please like this story, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and let me know in the comments where you're listening from. My name is Sarah, and I'm 30 years old. I thought I knew what family meant until the day I discovered the most heartbreaking betrayal that changed everything I believed about the people I'd spent my entire life protecting. The rain was hitting my apartment window that Tuesday morning when my phone buzzed with a text from my mom. Grandma Rose passed away suddenly. Funeral arrangements being made. That's it. No call, no emotion. Just a cold, matter-of-fact message that shattered my world. I dropped my coffee mug. It crashed to the floor, sending brown liquid across my kitchen tiles. But I couldn't move. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely hold my phone steady enough to call her back. "Mom?" My voice cracked when she finally answered after the fourth ring. "Oh, Sarah. Yes, well, these things happen. She was 87. When did this happen? How? I was supposed to visit her this Sunday, like always. Sunday night, in her sleep. Very peaceful. Why didn't you call me immediately? It's Tuesday morning." There was this pause, this terrible, cold pause that should have warned me something was wrong. "Well, there's been a lot to handle, arrangements and such." "What arrangements? When's the funeral? I need to take time off work." Another pause, longer this time. "Sarah, the funeral is family only, very small. You understand?" I didn't understand. Not at all. But before I could ask what she meant, she hung up. I sat on my kitchen floor surrounded by broken ceramic and spilled coffee, crying harder than I had in years. Grandma Rose was the only person in my family who truly loved me. She was my safe place, my Sunday afternoon sanctuary, the only one who ever asked how I was feeling instead of how much money I could spare. You see, for the past 8 years, I've been the family's silent ATM. After Dad's back injury left him unable to work construction, I became the one everyone turned to. I worked 2 jobs, a full-time position at an insurance company during the day and weekend shifts at a local restaurant. Every penny I didn't need for my tiny apartment went to keeping my family afloat. I paid for my brother Jake's college tuition when he wanted to study business. I covered my sister Emma's rehab costs when she struggled with addiction. I helped Mom with rent, utilities, groceries, and medical bills. When Jake needed a car for his internship, I co-signed the loan. When Emma wanted to take a photography course, I funded it. When Mom's roof started leaking, I paid for the repairs. But here's what hurt the most. Despite everything I sacrificed for them, I was never truly included. Family vacations happened without me. Holiday plans were made and shared in group chats I wasn't added to. Important family decisions were discussed at dinners I wasn't invited to. "Sarah's always working anyway," they'd say when I found out later. We didn't want to bother her. The only person who saw through this was Grandma Rose. Every Sunday at 3 o'clock, I'd drive 40 minutes to her little house on Maple Street. We'd sit in her sunroom, drinking tea from her good china and eating homemade cookies. She'd ask about my week, really listen to my answers, and share stories about her own life. "You're special, sweetheart," she'd tell me, holding my hands in her weathered ones. "Don't let them make you forget that." She was the one who encouraged me to apply for better jobs. She celebrated when I got promoted. She worried that I worked too hard and gave too much. She saw me as a person, not just a source of financial support. Those Sunday visits were sacred to me. Even when I was exhausted from working doubles, even when I had bills to pay or errands to run, I never missed our time together. Grandma Rose would save articles from magazines she thought I'd like, show me old photo albums, and teach me recipes that had been in our family for generations. "One day, these recipes will be yours," she'd say, carefully writing ingredients in her shaky handwriting on index cards. Family traditions should go to someone who values them. Now she was gone, and apparently, I wasn't even important enough to be told immediately. I called in sick to work and spent the day crying, looking through old photos of Grandma Rose and me. There was one from last Christmas where she's hugging me tight, both of us laughing at something Jake had said. I remembered that day. I'd brought presents for everyone, as usual. I'd spent $300 I couldn't really afford on gifts, making sure everyone had something nice under the tree. But when it came time for family photos, somehow I ended up taking them instead of being in them. "Sarah's better with the camera," Mom had said. Now I stared at that photo of just Grandma Rose and me, one of the few pictures where I was actually included instead of behind the lens, and my heart broke all over again. I tried calling Jake and Emma, but both calls went straight to voicemail. I texted our family group chat asking about funeral details, but no one responded. It was like I'd become invisible. Wednesday came and went. Thursday too. By Friday, I was desperate for information. I called Grandma Rose's house, thinking maybe someone would be there handling her affairs, but the line was disconnected. I drove to her neighborhood and sat in my car outside her house, hoping to see someone, anyone, who could tell me what was happening. The house looked exactly the same. Her garden gnomes still lined the walkway. Her rose bushes were blooming pink and white, like they did every spring. But the curtains were drawn tight, and there was a strange emptiness to the place that made my chest ache. That's when I decided to visit the places Grandma Rose and I used to go together. Maybe being close to her memories would help me process this grief that felt too big for my body to contain. I drove to Miller's Bakery, where we'd sometimes stop for her favorite lemon bars. The elderly woman behind the counter, Mrs. Chen, recognized me immediately. "Sarah, how are you, dear? I haven't seen you and Rose in a couple of weeks." "She passed away," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Mrs. Chen's face fell. "Oh, honey, when?" "Sunday night. The funeral." I couldn't finish the sentence. "I'm so sorry for your loss. Rose talked about you all the time, you know. She was so proud of you." I started crying right there in the bakery. Mrs. Chen came around the counter and hugged me like I was her own granddaughter. "She always said you were the light of her life," Mrs. Chen whispered. "Said you were the only one who really understood her." That made me cry harder. If Grandma Rose loved me so much, why wasn't I being included in saying goodbye to her? I left the bakery with a box of lemon bars I didn't want and drove aimlessly around town, trying to make sense of everything. That's when I decided to visit Grandma Rose's church. Maybe Pastor Williams would know about the funeral arrangements. Riverside Community Church was a small, white building where Grandma Rose had attended services for over 50 years. I found Pastor Williams in his office, and his face lit up when he saw me. "Sarah, I was hoping you'd come by." "Pastor Williams, I don't know if you heard, but Grandma Rose passed away." His expression shifted to confusion. "Yes, dear. I know. I performed the service." My blood went cold. "The service?" "The funeral. Tuesday morning. Beautiful service. Rose would have loved it." Tuesday morning, while I was at work, filing insurance claims and answering phones, my grandmother was being buried. I wasn't there," I whispered. Pastor Williams looked genuinely shocked. "What do you mean? Rose talked about you constantly. She said you were like a daughter to her." "My family said it was family only. Very small." "Small?" Pastor Williams frowned. "Sarah, there were over 60 people there. Rose had many friends in this community." The room started spinning. I gripped the edge of his desk to steady myself. 60 people? Your mother spoke beautifully about Rose's legacy. Your brother read a psalm. Your sister shared some lovely memories. The whole family was there. Aunts, uncles, cousins, even some distant relatives I hadn't seen in years. I felt like I was going to be sick. Everyone was there. Everyone except you. And we all wondered where you were. Your cousin Amanda asked your mother, and she said you were dealing with work obligations. Work obligations. That's what they told people. While I was sitting in my insurance office, heartbroken and trying to function through my grief, my entire extended family was saying goodbye to the woman who meant everything to me. And they told everyone I was too busy with work to attend. Pastor Williams reached across his desk and took my hand. Sarah, I think there's been some kind of miscommunication. Rose left specific instructions about her funeral, and she specifically mentioned wanting you involved. What do you mean? She asked that you be given this. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a sealed envelope with my name written in Grandma Rose's familiar handwriting. She brought this to me 3 months ago and asked me to make sure you received it after her passing. My hands trembled as I took the envelope. It was thick, like there were multiple pages inside. She also asked me to give you this key and this address. Pastor Williams handed me a small silver key and a piece of paper. She said you'd know what to do with them. I stared at the address. It was unfamiliar to me, somewhere up in the mountains, about an hour outside of town. Pastor Williams, did my family know about this envelope? Or the key? No, dear. Rose was very specific that these were for you alone. She said you were the only one who would understand. I clutched the envelope and key to my chest, feeling a mixture of love and rage so intense I could barely breathe. Even in death, Grandma Rose was still protecting me, still making sure I knew I mattered. But my family had stolen my chance to say goodbye to her. They had excluded me from her funeral, lied to the entire community about why I wasn't there, and acted like it was no big deal. Pastor Williams, can you tell me exactly what my mother said during her speech about Grandma Rose's legacy? He looked uncomfortable. Are you sure you want to hear this? Please! She talked about how Rose was always generous with the family, how she helped everyone financially over the years, and how her legacy would be continuing that tradition of supporting each other. The irony was so cruel, it was almost funny. Mom stood at Grandma Rose's funeral and talked about her legacy of supporting family, while deliberately excluding the family member who had been supporting everyone else. I thanked Pastor Williams and walked to my car on shaking legs. I sat in the church parking lot, holding Grandma Rose's envelope, afraid to open it but desperate to know what she wanted to tell me. Finally, I carefully tore open the seal. Inside were 3 handwritten pages in Grandma Rose's careful script, along with several legal documents. My dearest Sarah, the letter began, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I pray that my family had the decency to include you in saying goodbye to me. But knowing them as I do, I fear they may not have. She knew. Somehow, she knew exactly what would happen. You have been the joy of my life these past years. While others saw me as a source of financial help or obligation, you saw me as a person worth spending time with. You listened to my stories, laughed at my jokes, and made an old woman feel valued and loved. I was crying so hard I could barely read the words. I want you to know that I see everything you do for this family. I see how you sacrifice your own dreams to keep everyone else afloat. I see how they take your generosity for granted and exclude you from the very family you're holding together. The next paragraph made me gasp. That's why I've made you the executor of my estate. Everything I have is yours to manage and distribute as you see fit. The house on Maple Street, my savings account, my investments, and most importantly, the cabin at the address Pastor Williams gave you. I looked at the legal documents, official papers naming me as executor of her estate with full authority over all her assets. Her will, signed and notarized, leaving me complete control over everything. The cabin was my secret retreat, a place I bought years ago when your grandfather passed away. It's where I went to find peace. It's fully paid for, and now it's yours. Go there when you need to think clearly about your life. The final page broke my heart and changed everything. Sarah, you owe this family nothing more. You've given enough. You've sacrificed enough. It's time to live for yourself. Don't let them guilt you into continuing to be their safety net while they treat you like an outsider. I have left small amounts to Jake and Emma in the will, enough to show I cared, but not enough to bail them out of the messes they create. The bulk of my estate, including all financial accounts in the family home, is under your control. Use this power wisely. Sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to enable people who don't appreciate what they have. Live your life, sweetheart. You deserve so much more than being everyone's silent savior. All my love, Grandma Rose. P.S. Check the cabin thoroughly. I left you more than just a house. I sat in that church parking lot until the sun started setting, reading and rereading Grandma Rose's letter. She had seen everything. She understood exactly how my family treated me, and she had given me the power to change it. But more than that, she had given me permission to stop being everyone's financial and emotional support system. I drove home in a daze, Grandma Rose's key burning like a coal in my pocket. I had decisions to make, and for the first time in 8 years, I was going to make them based on what I wanted, not what my family needed from me. That night, I started adding up everything I'd spent on my family over the years. 8 years of rent assistance, utility bills, college tuition, car payments, medical expenses, home repairs, and countless smaller expenses that seemed minor at the time, but added up to a staggering amount. I had given them over $90,000 of my own money. $90,000 I could have used for my own education, my own home, my own dreams. And they couldn't even include me in my grandmother's funeral. As I sat there with my calculator and bank statements spread across my kitchen table, my phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Hey, can you help with rent this month? Emma's photography course payment is due too. Thanks, sis. No mention of Grandma Rose. No acknowledgement that I might be grieving. Just another request for money. As casual as asking about the weather. I stared at that text for a long time. Then I set my phone aside without responding and kept adding up numbers. By midnight, I had made my decision. Tomorrow, I would drive to the mountain cabin and see what Grandma Rose had left me there. Then, I would start making some changes that were long overdue. For the first time in years, I was going to put myself first. And if my family didn't like it, well, they had made it clear at Grandma Rose's funeral that I wasn't really family anyway. The next morning, I called in sick to work again and drove to the address on the paper Pastor Williams had given me. The road wound up through pine trees and around mountain curves until I reached a small clearing with the most beautiful log cabin I'd ever seen. It was like something from a fairy tale. Stone chimney, wraparound porch, flower boxes under every window. There was a small garden in the back and a creek running alongside the property. It was peaceful in a way that made my chest loosen for the first time in days. I used Grandma Rose's key to open the front door and stepped into what felt like a warm hug. The cabin was fully furnished with comfortable, rustic furniture and personal touches that were completely Grandma Rose. Family photos on the mantle, her favorite books on the shelves, even her reading glasses folded neatly on the coffee table. On the kitchen counter, there was another envelope with my name on it, along with a set of car keys I didn't recognize. This letter was shorter. Sarah, this cabin is your sanctuary now. In the bedroom closet, behind the winter coats, you'll find a safe. The combination is your birthday. Month, day, year. Inside are documents you'll need, and something special from me. The car keys are for the Honda in the garage. It's yours now, too. Title is in the safe. Take all the time you need to decide what comes next. Love, Grandma Rose. I found the safe exactly where she said it would be. Inside were more legal documents, the car title, and a jewelry box I recognized from Grandma Rose's bedroom. But there was also something I wasn't expecting. A thick folder labeled, "For Sarah's Future." Inside the folder were certificates of deposit, investment account statements, and savings account information. My grandmother had been secretly building a nest egg for me for years. The total was enough to change my entire life. There was also a handwritten note. This money came from the rent your family paid me for the Maple Street house over the years. I invested every penny they gave me and watched it grow. It seemed fitting that their rent money should become your freedom fund. I sat on the cabin floor and laughed until I cried. My family had been paying rent to live in Grandma Rose's house, and she had been saving every penny of it for me. But the biggest surprise was still to come. At the bottom of the folder was a deed to the Maple Street house, the house my family was currently living in rent-free, thinking they owned it. They didn't own it. I did. Grandma Rose had transferred ownership to me 6 months ago. My phone had been buzzing all morning, with texts from Jake and Emma asking about money, and a voicemail from Mom asking if I could cover the electric bill this month because things are tight. Things were about to get a lot tighter for them. I spent 3 days at the cabin, thinking and planning. I walked by the creek, sat on the porch swing, and felt more peaceful than I had in years. This was what Grandma Rose wanted for me. A place to breathe, to think clearly, to remember that I was worth more than what I could provide for other people. On the 4th day, I was ready to go home and make some changes. But first, I had one more stop to make. I drove back to town and went straight to Riverside Community Church. I needed to understand exactly what had happened at that funeral, and Pastor Williams was the only person who would tell me the truth. When I walked into his office, he looked up from his sermon notes with genuine concern in his eyes. "Sarah, how are you holding up, dear?" "Pastor Williams, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Of course." I took a deep breath. At the funeral, did anyone ask about me? Did anyone seem concerned that I wasn't there? His face grew troubled. "Well, yes. Several people asked. Your Aunt Margaret was particularly worried. She kept asking your mother where you were." "What did my mother tell her?" "She said you were dealing with important work commitments and couldn't get away." "And what did Aunt Margaret say to that?" Pastor Williams shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "She said it was strange because Rose always talked about how close you two were. She said Rose would have wanted you there more than anyone." My heart clenched. What else did she say? She mentioned that Rose had always spoken about you as if you were her favorite grandchild. She seemed confused by your absence. I felt tears building again. Even my extended family knew how important I was to Grandma Rose, which made my immediate family's decision to exclude me even more cruel. "Pastor Williams, did my mother seem upset that I wasn't there?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Sarah, I don't want to cause more pain, but since you're asking, no, she didn't seem upset about your absence at all." That confirmation hit me like a physical blow. My mother hadn't just excluded me, she hadn't even cared that I wasn't there. "There's something else," Pastor Williams continued gently. "After the service, I overheard your brother talking to some cousins. He said something about how they'd kept the funeral small and simple because Rose wouldn't have wanted a big fuss. But you said there were 60 people there. Exactly. And Rose had specifically told me months ago that she wanted a celebration of life, not a somber affair. She wanted music, flowers, and lots of people sharing happy memories. The funeral was exactly what she'd requested, which makes me think. Think what? I think they planned the funeral Rose wanted, but they deliberately didn't tell you about it. The room went silent, except for the ticking of the old clock on Pastor Williams's wall. The truth was settling over me like a heavy blanket, suffocating and inescapable. They hadn't just excluded me. They had actively planned to exclude me while giving everyone else exactly what Grandma Rose had wanted. Pastor Williams, did Grandma Rose ever mention anything about her will or her estate to you? She did mention that she'd made some changes recently. She seemed determined about something. She said she was making sure the right people were taken care of in the right way. I nodded, thinking about the documents I'd found at the cabin. Did she ever talk about how my family treated me? Pastor Williams looked deeply uncomfortable. Sarah, I don't like to repeat private conversations. Please, I need to know. He sighed heavily. She was worried about you. She said your family took advantage of your generous nature and that you were sacrificing too much of your own happiness to keep everyone else comfortable. Did she say anything specific? She mentioned that you were working 2 jobs to help support everyone, but that you were never included in family decisions or celebrations. She said it broke her heart to watch you give so much and receive so little appreciation in return. I closed my eyes, feeling both validated and heartbroken. Grandma Rose had seen everything, and it had worried her enough to make drastic changes to her estate planning. She also said, Pastor Williams continued quietly, that she hoped someday you'd realize you deserve better and find the strength to put yourself first. Well, I said, standing up and straightening my shoulders, I think that day has come. Pastor Williams smiled sadly. Rose would be proud of you for standing up for yourself. She loved you very much, Sarah. Don't let anyone make you forget that. I left the church with a heavy heart, but also with a growing sense of determination. Grandma Rose had given me more than just money and property. She'd given me permission to stop being everyone's doormat. My next stop was the bank where Grandma Rose had kept her accounts. As executor of her estate, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. The bank manager, Mr. Peterson, had known Grandma Rose for decades. When I showed him the legal documents, his eyebrows shot up. Rose made you executor? That's interesting. Interesting how? Well, your mother was in here just yesterday, asking about Rose's accounts. She seemed to think she would be handling the estate. My blood ran cold. What did you tell her? I couldn't tell her anything without proper documentation, but she seemed quite confident that she'd be taking over Rose's finances. Mr. Peterson, I need to know exactly what accounts exist and what the current status is. For the next hour, Mr. Peterson walked me through Grandma Rose's financial situation. She had been far more well off than anyone realized, with multiple savings accounts, CDs, and investment portfolios. The total was staggering. But the most shocking revelation came when Mr. Peterson pulled up the account activity for the past few months. Your mother has been making regular withdrawals from Rose's checking account, he said, showing me the statements. Rose had given her power of attorney for daily expenses, but these withdrawals are quite large. I stared at the numbers. Mom had been taking money from Grandma Rose's account for months, not just for groceries and medications, but for things like car repairs, credit card payments, and other personal expenses. How much has she taken in total? Mr. Peterson calculated quickly. In the past 6 months, about $12,000. $12,000. Yes, and yesterday, before she knew about the executor situation, she tried to make a withdrawal for $5,000. I had to decline it because the account is now frozen pending estate proceedings. I felt sick. While I had been working 2 jobs and sacrificing my own financial security to help the family, my mother had been secretly draining Grandma Rose's accounts. Mr. Peterson, as executor, what are my options here? Well, you have full authority over all of Rose's accounts now. You can review all transactions, request documentation for any questionable withdrawals, and manage the estate as you see fit. And the withdrawals my mother made? If they weren't for legitimate care expenses, they could be considered improper use of power of attorney. You could pursue recovery of those funds if you chose to. I left the bank with my head spinning. Not only had my family excluded me from Grandma Rose's funeral, but my mother had been stealing from her while she was alive. The pieces were falling into place, and the picture they formed was uglier than I had imagined. I drove home and sat in my car outside my apartment building, trying to process everything I'd learned. My phone buzzed with another text from Jake. Mom says you're being weird about money lately. Can you just send what you usually do? I have bills to pay. I stared at that text, feeling something shift inside me. The casual entitlement, the complete lack of awareness about my own struggles, the assumption that my money was their money. Then another text, this one from Emma. Sarah, I need $800 for next month's rent and some camera equipment. Can you transfer it today? And another from Mom. The electric bill is overdue. Can you handle it? Also, Jake's car needs new tires. 3 texts in 5 minutes, all asking for money. None of them acknowledging that I might be grieving the loss of someone I loved. I turned off my phone and went inside to pack a bag. I was going back to the cabin for a few days to think clearly about what I wanted to do next. But first, I had one more stop to make. I drove to the Maple Street house, the house where my family lived, the house that I now owned. I sat in my car across the street, watching them through the windows. Jake was on the couch playing video games. Emma was in the kitchen, probably eating food I'd paid for. Mom was in the living room watching TV. They all looked so comfortable, so secure in their assumption that I would always be there to solve their problems and pay their bills. None of them had called to check on how I was handling Grandma Rose's death. None of them had apologized for excluding me from the funeral. None of them had even acknowledged that they'd lied to the entire community about why I wasn't there. As I sat there watching them, my phone started buzzing with more texts. I turned it on and saw a barrage of messages. Jake, seriously, Sarah, where are you? I need that money today. Emma, are you ignoring us? This is important. Mom, Sarah, I'm worried about you. You're not answering your phone. Please call me. The concern in Mom's text would have touched me a few days ago. Now I could see it for what it really was. Worry that their ATM machine might be malfunctioning. I started the car and drove away without going inside. At the cabin, I spent the evening going through more of Grandma Rose's papers. In her personal journal, I found entries that broke my heart and solidified my resolve. Sarah came by today. One entry from 3 months ago read, "She looked so tired. I asked if she was taking care of herself, and she said she was fine, but I can see the exhaustion in her eyes. She's working herself to death for people who don't appreciate her sacrifice." Another entry, Margaret called today asking about Sarah. She said she never sees her at family gatherings anymore. I had to explain that Sarah isn't usually invited to family gatherings, even though she's the one paying for everyone's lives. Margaret was shocked. She said in her family, the person who helps everyone the most gets the most honor, not the least. And this one, from just a month before she died. I've decided to change my will. Sarah deserves so much more than what this family gives her. Maybe having control of my estate will help her realize she has the power to change her situation. I pray she finds the courage to use it. I cried reading those entries, but they also filled me with a strange sense of peace. Grandma Rose had seen everything clearly, and she'd given me the tools to change my life. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going back to being everyone's financial support system. I wasn't going to continue sacrificing my own dreams and well-being for people who couldn't even include me in saying goodbye to the woman I loved most. The next morning, I called my boss at the insurance company and my manager at the restaurant. I quit both jobs. Then I started making phone calls to cancel services and close accounts. I called the electric company and removed my name from Mom's account. I called the cable company and canceled the service I'd been paying for at the Maple Street house. I contacted Jake's college and stopped the automatic payments I'd been making toward his tuition. I went to the bank and closed the joint account I'd opened to help with family emergencies, the account that had somehow become their personal ATM. I called the auto loan company and asked about removing myself from Jake's car loan. I called Emma's rehab facility and stopped the monthly payments I'd been making on her payment plan. Each phone call felt like removing a weight from my shoulders. Then I did something I'd never done before. I went shopping for myself. I bought new clothes, got my hair done, and treated myself to a nice dinner at a restaurant I'd always wanted to try but could never afford because I was always giving my money away. For the first time in 8 years, I spent money on myself without guilt. My phone was constantly buzzing with increasingly frantic messages from my family, but I ignored them all. On the third day at the cabin, I finally felt ready to face them. I drove to the Maple Street house and knocked on the door. When Mom answered, her face showed relief, followed quickly by irritation. "Sarah, where have you been? We've been trying to reach you for days." "I've been busy." "Busy with what?" "Jake needs money for his car, and Emma's rent is due tomorrow. The electric company sent a notice that service is being disconnected." I looked at my mother, really looked at her. She was standing in the doorway of the house I now owned, wearing clothes bought with money I'd provided, getting ready to ask me for more money without a trace of shame or gratitude. "Mom, we need to talk. All of us." "About what?" "Sarah, you're being dramatic. Just write the checks, and we can discuss whatever's bothering you later." "No, we're going to discuss it now." Jake appeared behind Mom. "Finally! Sarah, I've been texting you for days. My car payment is overdue." Emma joined them in the doorway. "And I'm about to lose my apartment. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with me?" After everything they'd done, after excluding me from Grandma Rose's funeral and lying to everyone about why I wasn't there, they were asking what was wrong with me. "What's wrong with me," I said slowly, "is that I found out Grandma Rose died and was buried, and nobody bothered to tell me until after the funeral was over." The three of them exchanged glances. Mom spoke first. "Sarah, don't be dramatic. It was a small service, family only." "There were 60 people there, Mom. I talked to Pastor Williams." "Well, it was still family-focused. You understand." "No, I don't understand. I don't understand how the person who's been financially supporting this family for 8 years isn't considered family enough to attend her grandmother's funeral." Jake stepped forward. "Look, Sarah, I get that you're upset, but can we deal with this later? I seriously need that car payment." I stared at him. Even now, even in the middle of this conversation, all he cared about was money. "Jake, do you have any idea how much money I've given you over the years?" "I don't know. Some. But that's what family does, right?" $47,000. I've given you $47,000 for college, car payments, living expenses, and various emergencies. His face went pale. That's not right. I have the receipts, bank statements, canceled checks, $47,000. I turned to Emma. And you? $31,000. Rehab, rent, photography courses, equipment, car repairs, medical bills. Emma's mouth fell open. Sarah? I had no idea it was that much. And Mom? I looked at my mother, who was starting to look nervous. $53,000 over 8 years, plus the $12,000 you've been taking from Grandma Rose's accounts without telling anyone. Mom's face flushed red. How did you? Those were legitimate expenses. Car repairs are legitimate expenses for caring for an elderly woman? I was managing her finances. She asked me to handle things. She asked you to handle her daily care expenses, not to use her accounts as your personal ATM. The three of them stood there in stunned silence. I could see them doing the math in their heads, realizing for the first time how much I'd actually sacrificed for them. Sarah, Mom said finally, her voice softer, we're grateful for everything you've done, but family helps family. That's just how it is. You're right, I said. Family helps family. So why wasn't I considered family enough to be told about Grandma Rose's death immediately? Why wasn't I family enough to be invited to her funeral? Why wasn't I family enough to be included in the planning? That's different, Jake said weakly. How is it different? Well, you're always working, and we didn't want to burden you with the details. I work 2 jobs to pay for your lives. I work 2 jobs because you all keep needing money. I haven't had a vacation in 3 years because every time I save money, one of you has an emergency that requires my bank account. Emma started crying. Sarah, we didn't realize. You didn't realize because you never asked. You never asked how I was doing, how I was managing, whether I was okay. You just asked for money. That's not fair, Mom said, her voice getting defensive again. We care about you. Really? When's the last time any of you asked how I was feeling? When's the last time you invited me to something that didn't involve me paying for it? When's the last time you included me in a family decision? They couldn't answer because the answer was never. I'll tell you what's not fair, I continued. What's not fair is working 2 jobs while you all live comfortably. What's not fair is being excluded from family events while funding family life. What's not fair is finding out my grandmother died from a text message and then discovering that her funeral happened without me. Sarah, please, Mom said, reaching for my arm. Let's go inside and talk about this calmly. I stepped back. There's something else you need to know. Grandma Rose made me the executor of her estate. All 3 faces went blank. What does that mean? Jake asked. It means I'm in charge of everything she left behind. Her money, her investments, her property, all of it. But Mom said she was handling Grandma Rose's affairs, Emma said, looking confused. Mom thought she was, but Grandma Rose changed her will 6 months ago. I pulled out the legal documents. Everything goes through me now. I watched as the implications sank in. They had been counting on inheriting from Grandma Rose to solve their financial problems. Jake had been planning to use his inheritance to pay off his car and credit cards. Emma had been hoping for enough money to move to a bigger apartment and buy professional photography equipment. Mom had been assuming she'd inherit the house and have security for the first time in years. How much? Mom asked quietly. How much what? How much did she leave? Enough. Enough to change everything. And you're going to share it with family, right? Jake asked, his voice hopeful. I mean, she was our grandmother too. I looked at the 3 people who had shaped my entire adult life around their needs while ignoring my own. The 3 people who had excluded me from saying goodbye to the woman who loved me most. Grandma Rose left specific instructions about how her estate should be handled, I said carefully, and I intend to follow those instructions exactly. What I didn't tell them was that those instructions essentially boiled down to take care of yourself first and don't let them take advantage of you anymore. But I also didn't tell them that they were each getting small amounts, enough to show Grandma Rose had cared, but not enough to solve their self-created financial problems. And I definitely didn't tell them that I now owned the house they were standing in. Look, Mom said, we can discuss Grandma Rose's estate later. Right now, we have immediate needs. The electricity is getting shut off tomorrow if we don't pay the bill. Then you better figure out how to pay it. What do you mean? I mean, I'm not paying your bills anymore. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah, Emma said slowly, what are you saying? I'm saying I'm done. Done working 2 jobs to fund your lives. Done sacrificing my own financial security for people who don't appreciate it. Done being treated like an ATM instead of a family member. You can't be serious, Jake said. We depend on you. I know you do. That's the problem. Sarah, you're being unreasonable, Mom said, her voice getting sharp. We're family. We stick together. Where was that family loyalty when you were planning Grandma Rose's funeral without me? That was different. No, it wasn't. It was exactly the same. You take what you need from me, and you exclude me from what matters to you. I turned to walk back to my car. Where are you going? Mom called after me. To live my life. Sarah, wait. Emma ran after me. We can work this out. We can include you more. We can be better. I stopped and turned around. For a moment, I saw genuine regret in Emma's eyes, and I felt a flicker of hope. Emma, do you know what today is? She looked confused. Thursday? It's my birthday. Her face went white. Oh my God, Sarah. I'm so sorry. With everything that's been happening, it's my 30th birthday. I've been dreading it for months because I knew none of you would remember. I knew I'd spend it alone, just like I spend every birthday. Jake and Mom had joined us on the lawn. They both looked stricken. We can celebrate this weekend, Jake offered weakly. We can do something special. With what money? I asked. The money I give you? The money I earn working jobs I hate to pay for your lives? None of them had an answer for that. I'm 30 years old, I said. I've never been able to save for a house because I'm always bailing you out. I've never been able to go back to school because I'm paying for Jake's education. I've never been able to travel or pursue my own dreams because I'm funding everyone else's. Sarah, we had no idea you felt this way, Mom said, because you never asked. In 8 years of taking my money, you never once asked if I was okay, if I needed anything, if I had dreams of my own. We just assumed you were fine, Emma said. You never complained. I never complained because I loved you. I wanted to help, but loving someone doesn't mean destroying yourself for them. I got in my car and rolled down the window. The electricity is your problem now. Jake's car payment is his problem. Emma's rent is her problem. I'm done solving problems for people who don't value me enough to include me in their lives. Sarah, please don't do this, Mom pleaded. We need you. You need my money. There's a difference. That's not true. Then prove it. Prove that you value me as a person, not just as a source of financial support. How? Emma asked desperately. I thought about Grandma Rose's funeral, about sitting in that church parking lot reading her letter, about the years of being excluded and taken for granted. I don't know, I said honestly, but I know that continuing to enable you isn't helping any of us. What would you do if your family treated you this way? Let me know in the comments. I drove away from that house with my hands shaking and my heart pounding. Behind me, I could see my family standing on the lawn, probably still trying to process what had just happened. For the first time in 8 years, I had said no to them. For the first time in my adult life, I had put myself first. But as the adrenaline wore off, doubt started creeping in. Was I being too harsh? Was I overreacting? These were the people who raised me, who had been part of my life forever. Maybe I should have been more understanding, more patient. Then I remembered sitting in that church parking lot, reading Grandma Rose's letter, learning that she had seen everything I was going through and had been worried enough to completely restructure her will to protect me. I drove back to the cabin and spent the rest of the evening going through more of Grandma Rose's personal papers. What I found there changed everything I thought I knew about my family's financial situation. Hidden in a folder marked Important Documents were copies of loan applications, bank statements, and credit reports for my mother, Jake, and Emma. Somehow, Grandma Rose had obtained this information, probably when Mom asked her to co-sign for various loans over the years. The picture they painted was shocking. My mother had 13 different credit cards, all maxed out. She owed over $40,000 in credit card debt alone, plus a car loan, personal loans, and back taxes. Despite receiving hundreds of dollars from me every month, she was drowning in debt. Jake's financial situation was even worse. Beyond the car loan I was helping with and the college expenses I was covering, he had private student loans, multiple credit cards, and had apparently been using his college financial aid money for things other than education. He owed over $60,000. Emma's credit report showed a pattern of irresponsible spending and defaulted payments. She had been evicted from 2 previous apartments for non-payment of rent, had multiple accounts in collections, and despite all the money I'd given her for emergencies, she was constantly on the verge of financial ruin. But the most shocking discovery was a handwritten note from Grandma Rose, dated just 2 months before her death. Sarah has been supporting 3 people who are addicted to debt and poor financial decisions. Every dollar she gives them enables them to make worse choices. She thinks she's helping them, but she's actually preventing them from learning to be responsible adults. The note continued. I've tried to talk to Margaret about this, but she says Sarah volunteered to help, and it's Sarah's choice. What Margaret doesn't understand is that Sarah feels obligated because she's been trained to believe her worth comes from what she can provide for others. Grandma Rose had seen the whole situation clearly. She understood that my family wasn't just taking advantage of my generosity. They were actively preventing their own growth by relying on me to fix everything. There was more. Grandma Rose had kept a detailed log of every time someone in the family had asked her for money and what they claimed they needed it for versus what she later discovered they actually spent it on. Mom had asked for money to fix the roof, then used it to go on a weekend trip with her friends. Jake had asked for money for textbooks, then spent it on a new gaming system. Emma had asked for money for car repairs, then spent it on expensive photography equipment she couldn't afford. They had been lying to Grandma Rose the same way they had been lying to me. The most heartbreaking entry was from 3 weeks before Grandma Rose died. Margaret came by today asking for money again. She said Sarah was having trouble keeping up with all the family expenses and could I help out this month. I almost gave her the money, but then I realized if Sarah is struggling, why isn't the family cutting back on expenses instead of asking for more money? Why are they adding to her burden instead of reducing it? I told Margaret no. She got angry and said I was being selfish with my money. She said family is supposed to help family. I told her that's exactly what I was doing, helping the family member who needs it most, which is Sarah. I sat on the cabin floor, surrounded by papers, and cried. Grandma Rose had been protecting me even in her final weeks, and my family had probably resented her for it. That night, I barely slept. My phone buzzed constantly with texts and voicemails from my family, but I couldn't bring myself to read them. I was afraid they would guilt me into going back to the old pattern, afraid they would make me feel selfish for finally standing up for myself. The next morning, I made a decision that would change everything. I called the law office that had handled Grandma Rose's estate planning and made an appointment for that afternoon. Attorney Rebecca Martinez was a sharp, professional woman in her 50s who had clearly dealt with complicated family situations before. When I explained what had been happening, she nodded knowingly. "Mrs. Henderson, your grandmother came to see me several times in her final months. She was very concerned about your family's financial dependence on you." "What did she tell you?" "She said you were working yourself to exhaustion, supporting people who were making increasingly poor financial decisions. She was worried that your generosity was enabling destructive behavior." Ms. Martinez pulled out a thick file. She was very specific about her intentions for the estate. She wanted to provide you with the resources to break free from this cycle of dependency. "What exactly did she leave me?" For the next hour, Ms. Martinez walked me through the full extent of Grandma Rose's estate. Beyond what I already knew about, there were investment accounts, life insurance policies, and property I hadn't known existed. The total value was enough to change my life completely. Enough to buy my own home, go back to school, start a business, or simply have the security of never being financially desperate again. But the most important thing Grandma Rose had left me was documentation of every financial transaction my family had made with her over the years, along with copies of their loan applications and credit reports. "Your grandmother wanted you to understand the full scope of the situation," Ms. Martinez explained. "She believed that if you knew how deep their financial problems really were, you'd realize that your money wasn't helping them. It was enabling them." "What about Jake and Emma's inheritances?" $5,000 each. Enough to show she cared about them, but as she told me, not enough to bail them out of the consequences of their poor choices. "And my mother?" "Nothing beyond the return of the power of attorney funds she misused. Your grandmother was quite clear that your mother had already received more than enough financial help over the years." I left the law office feeling overwhelmed, but also strangely liberated. Grandma Rose had given me everything I needed to start over. But more importantly, she had given me permission to stop sacrificing myself for people who didn't appreciate it. That evening, I finally listened to the voicemails my family had left. The first was from Mom. "Sarah, honey, I know you're upset, but we really need to work this out. The electricity got shut off today, and I don't know how we're going to manage without your help." The second was from Jake. "Sarah, this is ridiculous. You can't just cut us off like this. We're family. I need that car payment by Friday, or they're going to repossess it." The third was from Emma. "Sarah, I'm really scared. I got an eviction notice today, and I don't have anywhere else to go. Please call me back." Then there was another one from Mom. "Sarah, I talked to Pastor Williams today. He said you think we excluded you from Grandma Rose's funeral on purpose. That's not what happened. We were just trying to keep things simple. You're being unreasonable." And another from Jake. "Look, I get that you're mad about the funeral thing, but that's in the past. We have real problems now. Can you please just help us out one more time?" Listening to those messages, I realized something that shocked me. Not one of them had apologized. Not one of them had acknowledged that excluding me from Grandma Rose's funeral was wrong. Not one of them had asked how I was feeling or whether I was okay. Every single message was about what they needed from me. Even in crisis, even when I had cut them off financially, their first and only concern was getting my money, not repairing our relationship, not understanding why I was hurt, not making amends for the ways they had treated me. Just money. The final voicemail was from Mom, and it was different in tone. "Sarah, I don't know what's gotten into you, but this selfishness isn't like you. Grandma Rose would be ashamed of the way you're treating your family. She always said family comes first. And here you are abandoning us when we need you most. I hope you can live with yourself." That message made me angrier than all the others combined. How dare she invoke Grandma Rose's memory to guilt me into continuing to enable them? How dare she talk about family loyalty when they had excluded me from Grandma Rose's funeral? I called Ms. Martinez that night. "Ms. Martinez, I need to ask you something about Grandma Rose's estate. Is there any way my family can contest the will or challenge my role as executor?" Not successfully. Your grandmother was very thorough in her documentation. She had multiple witnesses, psychological evaluations to prove her mental competency, and detailed explanations for her decisions. The will is ironclad. Good, because I think they're going to try to fight this when they find out what's actually in the estate. "Mrs. Henderson, may I give you some advice?" "Please." Your grandmother spent months planning this. She researched family financial dependency, consulted with therapists about enabling behavior, and carefully structured her estate to give you the tools to break free from an unhealthy dynamic. Don't let guilt make you waste the gift she's given you. What if they're right? What if I am being selfish? Setting boundaries isn't selfish. Taking care of yourself isn't selfish. Refusing to enable destructive behavior isn't selfish. Your family has trained you to believe that your worth comes from what you can provide for them. That's not healthy for any of you. That conversation gave me the courage to do what I needed to do next. The following morning, I drove to the Maple Street house. I had legal papers with me. Eviction notices, actually, though my family didn't know that yet. When I knocked on the door, Mom answered immediately, like she'd been waiting by the window. "Sarah, thank God you're here. Did you bring the check for the electricity?" "No, Mom. I brought something else." I handed her the legal documents. "You have 30 days to find somewhere else to live." Her face went white as she read the papers. "What is this?" "It's an eviction notice. This house belongs to me now. Grandma Rose transferred ownership to me 6 months ago." "That's impossible." Jake and Emma appeared behind her, looking confused and worried. "What's going on?" Jake asked. "Sarah owns the house," Mom said faintly. "She's kicking us out." "What?" Emma's voice was high and panicked. "Sarah, you can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. You have 30 days. Where are we supposed to go?" Jake demanded. "That's not my problem to solve anymore." "Sarah, this is insane," Mom said, her voice getting louder. "You can't just throw your family out on the street. You threw me out of Grandma Rose's funeral. You decided I wasn't family when it mattered to me. Now I'm deciding I'm not family when it matters to you. That's completely different." "How?" Because we need this house. We don't have anywhere else to go." "And I needed to say goodbye to Grandma Rose. But that didn't matter to you." Emma started crying. "Sarah, please. I know we messed up with the funeral, but this is our home." "No, it's not. It's my home. It was Grandma Rose's home, and she left it to me." "We'll fight this," Jake said angrily. "We'll contest the will. We'll prove you manipulated a sick old woman. Go ahead and try." Grandma Rose was evaluated by 3 different doctors in her final months. All confirmed she was mentally competent. She met with her lawyer multiple times, with witnesses present. She documented her reasons for every decision. I pulled out copies of Grandma Rose's notes about their financial irresponsibility and handed them over. She knew about Mom's credit card debt. She knew about Jake's gambling. She knew about Emma's shopping addiction. She knew you were all lying about what you needed money for. They stood there reading Grandma Rose's notes, their faces growing paler with each page. She also knew, I continued, that I was working myself to death trying to support people who were making increasingly poor financial decisions. She knew that every dollar I gave you enabled you to make worse choices. "That's not true," Mom said weakly. "Really? Mom, you owe $47,000 in credit card debt, despite receiving over $500 a month from me for years. Where did all that money go?" She couldn't answer. "Jake, you owe $60,000 in loans, not counting the car and college expenses I've been covering. What did you spend your financial aid money on?" He looked away. "Emma, you've been evicted twice for non-payment of rent, despite me giving you money for rent every month. Where did that money go?" She was crying too hard to respond. "I have been enabling you to destroy your own financial lives while destroying mine in the process. Grandma Rose saw that, even if I couldn't." "So what? You're just going to abandon us?" Mom asked bitterly. "I'm going to let you learn to take care of yourselves, the same way you let me take care of myself when you excluded me from the most important family event in years." I turned to leave, then stopped. "By the way, the funeral expenses you've been worrying about? They're already paid. Grandma Rose prepaid everything 6 months ago, so that money you took from her accounts wasn't for funeral costs. It was just theft." I walked back to my car as they stood in the doorway, probably realizing for the first time that their financial house of cards was finally collapsing. As I drove away, I felt something I hadn't felt in 8 years: freedom. For the first time since I was 22 years old, I didn't have to worry about anyone's financial problems but my own. I didn't have to check my bank account before making purchases to make sure I had enough left over for the next family emergency. I didn't have to work jobs I hated to fund other people's poor decisions. I was free. That night, at the cabin, I made a list of all the things I wanted to do with my life, things I had put on hold for 8 years while I solved everyone else's problems. I wanted to go back to school and get my master's degree in social work. I wanted to travel, to see places I'd only dreamed about. I wanted to buy a house of my own, maybe this cabin, and make it truly mine. I wanted to start a nonprofit organization to help other people break free from financially abusive family relationships. For the first time in years, I was thinking about my own dreams instead of other people's emergencies. But I also knew this was just the beginning. My family wasn't going to give up easily. They were going to try everything they could think of to guilt me, manipulate me, or force me back into the role of family ATM. The real test was still coming. Over the next few days, the messages from my family became increasingly desperate and manipulative. Mom left voicemails crying about how she was going to end up homeless. Jake threatened to drop out of college and ruin his future if I didn't help with tuition. Emma sent long texts about how she was having panic attacks and couldn't function without my support. Then they started involving other people. I got calls from aunts and uncles I barely knew, all telling me I was being cruel and unreasonable. I got messages from family friends saying they were shocked by my behavior. I even got a call from Jake's girlfriend, begging me to reconsider because Jake was falling apart. The pressure was intense. There were moments when I almost gave in, when the guilt became so overwhelming that I considered going back to the old way of doing things. But then I would read Grandma Rose's letter again, or look at the photos of us together, or remember sitting in that church parking lot, learning that I had been excluded from her funeral, and I would remember that I deserved better. The hardest moment came 2 weeks later when Emma showed up at the cabin. She looked terrible, thin, pale, with dark circles under her eyes. "Sarah, please," she said when I opened the door. "I'm desperate. I'm staying in my car. I lost my apartment. I lost my job, and I don't know what to do." Looking at my sister in that state almost broke my resolve. This was the little girl I had protected growing up, the teenager I had helped through her addiction, the young woman I had supported through countless crises. Emma, I'm sorry you're struggling, but giving you money isn't going to solve this. Just this once, just enough to get me back on my feet. That's what you said every other time. This is different. I've learned my lesson. Have you? Have you made a budget? Have you applied for jobs? Have you contacted social services about assistance programs? Have you looked into addiction counseling for your spending problems? She stared at me. You want me to go to counseling? Emma, in the past 2 years, I've given you over $15,000 for various emergencies. Where did all that money go? It went to necessary things. Like the $3,000 camera you bought last month? Her face flushed. That was for my career. While you were behind on rent, I needed professional equipment to get better clients. Emma, do you see the pattern? You prioritize wants over needs, then create emergencies that other people have to solve. That's not sustainable. I can't believe you're psychoanalyzing me instead of helping me. I am helping you. I'm refusing to enable you anymore. She started crying. What happened to you, Sarah? You used to care about family. I still care about family. That's why I'm doing this. This isn't caring. This is abandonment. No, Emma. Abandonment is what you all did to me at Grandma Rose's funeral. This is called setting boundaries. She left angry, but I hoped that maybe, eventually, she would understand that I was trying to help her learn to help herself. What's the hardest boundary you've ever had to set with someone you love? 3 weeks after that confrontation with Emma, I woke up to find my car tires slashed. All 4 of them cut so deeply they couldn't be repaired. Someone had also spray painted "selfish" across my windshield in red letters that looked like blood in the morning light. I stood in the cabin's driveway, staring at my destroyed car, and felt something shift inside me. The guilt and uncertainty I'd been carrying since cutting off my family crystallized into pure anger. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about intimidation, manipulation, and emotional terrorism. I called the police and filed a report, even though I knew they probably couldn't prove who did it. But I wanted it documented. Then I called a tow truck and had my car taken to a repair shop. While I waited for the tow truck, my phone rang. It was Mom. Sarah, we need to talk. Do we? This has gone too far. You've made your point. Have I? Emma is having a breakdown. Jake dropped out of school. The family is falling apart, and it's all because you decided to be vindictive over a misunderstanding about a funeral. I looked at my slashed tires and felt my jaw clench. Mom, someone vandalized my car last night, slashed all 4 tires, and spray painted "selfish" on my windshield. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you? There was a long pause. Sarah, that's terrible. I can't believe someone would do that. Really? You can't believe it? Because it happened the day after Emma came to see me, and she was pretty upset when she left. You're not suggesting that Sarah, how could you even think that? The same way you could think it was okay to exclude me from Grandma Rose's funeral and then act like I'm the problem. That's completely different, is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my family thinks it's acceptable to hurt me when I don't do what you want. No one in this family would vandalize your car. Then who did? I don't know, but blaming us is just another way you're trying to justify your cruelty. I hung up without another word. An hour later, Jake called. Sarah, I heard about your car. That's messed up. Yes, it is. Look, I know things have been tense between us, but I want you to know I had nothing to do with that. Okay. Emma's really struggling, though. She's been staying with different friends, and she's not in a good headspace. Jake, are you telling me this because you're concerned about Emma? or because you want me to feel guilty enough to give her money. I'm telling you because she's our sister and she needs help. She needs professional help, not financial help. Sarah, come on. She's family. So am I, supposedly. But that didn't stop you all from excluding me when it mattered. We've apologized for that. No, you haven't. Not once has anyone in this family actually apologized for excluding me from Grandma Rose's funeral. You've explained it, justified it, minimized it, and blamed me for being upset about it, but no one has apologized. Jake was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry. I'm sorry we didn't include you. It was the first genuine apology I'd received, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Thank you, I said softly. So, can we work this out? Can we find a way to move forward? Jake, I appreciate the apology, but moving forward doesn't mean going back to the way things were. What do you mean? I mean, I'm not going back to working 2 jobs to fund everyone else's poor financial decisions. I'm not going back to being the family ATM. And I'm not giving up the house that Grandma Rose left me. But where are we supposed to live? That's something you'll have to figure out. Sarah, we can't afford rent anywhere else. Then maybe it's time to make some changes. Get better jobs, create budgets, stop spending money you don't have. It's not that simple. It actually is that simple. It's just not easy. Sarah, please. I'm begging you, don't destroy our family over this. I'm not destroying our family, Jake. I'm refusing to continue enabling our family's dysfunction. There's a difference. After I hung up, I sat on the cabin's porch and thought about what Jake had said. Was I destroying our family? Was I being too harsh? Then I remembered something Grandma Rose had written in one of her notes. Sometimes, the greatest act of love is refusing to enable people who are destroying themselves. That afternoon, I drove my rental car to town and met with Ms. Martinez again. I wanted to understand all my legal options regarding the house in the estate. Mrs. Henderson, you have every legal right to evict them from the property. In fact, since you're now paying property taxes and insurance on a house you can't occupy because they're living there, you could argue they're costing you money. What about the estate funds they think they're going to inherit? They'll receive their designated amounts once the estate is fully settled. $5,000 each for Jake and Emma, as specified in the will. And my mother? Nothing, aside from the requirement that she repay the funds she improperly withdrew from your grandmother's accounts. How much was that? Ms. Martinez checked her files. $12,400. So she actually owes money to the estate? Correct. I thought about this. My mother would receive nothing from Grandma Rose's estate, and she would actually have to repay money she had stolen. Meanwhile, Jake and Emma would each get $5,000. Enough to help them get started somewhere new, but not enough to bail them out of their financial problems long term. Ms. Martinez, what happens if they refuse to move out of the house? Then you go through the formal eviction process. Given the circumstances, it would probably take about 60 days total. And what happens to their inheritance if they fight the will? Fighting the will would likely cost them more in legal fees than they would receive in inheritance. Plus, your grandmother documented her reasoning extensively. They have virtually no chance of winning. I left that meeting feeling more confident in my decisions. Grandma Rose had thought everything through carefully, and she had given me both the legal tools and the financial resources to break free from my family's financial abuse. That evening, I got a call from Aunt Margaret, my mother's sister. Sarah, honey, I heard about what's been happening with the family. What have you heard? Your mother told me you inherited everything from Rose, and you're throwing the family out of their home. Is that what she told you? She said you're angry about some mix-up with the funeral arrangements and you're taking it out on everyone. I took a deep breath. Aunt Margaret, can I tell you what actually happened? For the next 30 minutes, I walked Aunt Margaret through everything. The text message about Grandma Rose's death, the lie about it being family only, discovering that 60 people had attended while I was told I couldn't come, finding out about Mom's theft from Grandma Rose's accounts, and learning about everyone's hidden debt despite years of financial support from me. "Oh my God," Aunt Margaret said when I finished. "Sarah, I had no idea. Did you know I wasn't at the funeral?" "I was there, and I noticed you weren't. But when I asked your mother, she said you were dealing with work obligations." "I was at work because I thought the funeral was going to be later. No one told me it was happening that day." That's awful, honey. Rose talked about you constantly. She would have been heartbroken to know you weren't there. She probably would have been, but she also left me a letter saying she suspected this might happen. She knew they might exclude you. She knew how they treated me. She saw how I was working myself to death to support people who didn't appreciate it. Aunt Margaret was quiet for a long moment. "Sarah, your mother painted a very different picture of the situation." "I'm sure she did. She made it sound like you were being vindictive and cruel, cutting them off financially over a minor misunderstanding." Excluding me from Grandma Rose's funeral wasn't a minor misunderstanding, Aunt Margaret. It was a deliberate choice that showed me exactly how little they value me as a person versus what I can provide for them financially. "I need to think about all this," Aunt Margaret said. "This is so different from what I was told." "I understand, but I wanted you to know the truth because I suspect you're not getting it from anyone else." 2 days later, Aunt Margaret called me back. "Sarah, I talked to some other family members who were at the funeral. You're right. It wasn't small or simple. It was exactly what Rose wanted, and there's no reason you shouldn't have been included. Thank you for checking. I also talked to your mother about the money situation. She got very defensive and angry when I asked about it. She's been taking money from Grandma Rose's accounts without permission, and she's been lying about her financial situation for years. I believe you. And Sarah, I think you're doing the right thing by setting boundaries. It's hard to watch, but sometimes people need to face consequences for their actions." That conversation meant more to me than I could express. Having someone in the family actually listen to my side of the story and validate my feelings was something I hadn't experienced in years. But the next day brought a new crisis. Emma called me, sobbing hysterically. "Sarah, I'm in the hospital." My heart stopped. "What happened? Are you okay?" I took some pills. I just wanted the pain to stop." "Emma, where are you? I'm coming." "No, I don't want to see you. I just wanted you to know that this is what your selfishness has driven me to." The line went dead. I called the hospital and managed to find out that Emma was in the emergency room but was stable. I drove there immediately, despite her saying she didn't want to see me. When I got to the hospital, I found Mom and Jake in the waiting room. "This is your fault," Mom hissed the moment she saw me. "Are you happy now? Emma tried to kill herself because of what you've done to this family. How is she?" "She's alive. No thanks to you." Jake looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. "Sarah, please, this has to stop. Look what's happening to us." I sat down next to him. "Jake, Emma's suicide attempt isn't my fault. Emma has been struggling with addiction and mental health issues for years. Giving her money wasn't helping those problems. It was masking them. She wouldn't have tried to hurt herself if you hadn't cut her off. She might not have tried to hurt herself if someone had gotten her proper mental health treatment instead of just throwing money at her problems." Mom stood up abruptly. "I can't listen to this. You're sitting here blaming Emma for her own suicide attempt. I'm not blaming Emma for anything. I'm saying that addiction and mental health problems require professional treatment, not financial bailouts. So you're going to continue being selfish even after this? I looked at my mother, really looked at her. She was exhausted, angry, and desperate. But even in this crisis, even with Emma in the hospital, she was still trying to manipulate me into resuming my role as the family's financial savior. Mom, when you say I'm being selfish, what specifically do you mean? You know what you're doing. No, I want you to spell it out. What specifically am I doing that's selfish? You're abandoning your family when we need you most. How am I abandoning you? You stopped paying our bills. You're kicking us out of our home. You're keeping all of Grandma Rose's money for yourself. Mom, I worked 2 jobs for 8 years to pay bills that weren't mine. I sacrificed my own financial security, my own dreams, my own future to keep you all afloat. How is stopping that selfish? Because family helps family. You're right. Family does help family. So, where was that family help when I needed to say goodbye to Grandma Rose? Where was that family loyalty when you decided to exclude me from her funeral? Where was that family support when I was working myself to exhaustion to pay for everyone else's lives? Mom couldn't answer that. And, I continued, if family helps family, why haven't any of you helped me? In 8 years of supporting this family, when did any of you offer to help me? When did any of you sacrifice something for my benefit? Jake shifted uncomfortably. We didn't know you needed help because you never asked. You never asked how I was doing, whether I could afford to help, whether I had dreams of my own, whether I was okay. You just asked for money. A doctor appeared in the waiting room. Family of Emma Collins. We all stood up. She's stable and awake. The psychiatrist wants to keep her for observation for at least 72 hours, but physically, she's going to be fine. Can we see her? Mom asked. She can have visitors, but she's specifically requested not to see. The doctor looked at his notes. Sarah, my heart broke a little. Even in crisis, Emma was blaming me for her problems. Doctor, I said, I'm Emma's sister. Can you tell me if she's getting proper mental health treatment? Ma'am, I can't discuss her treatment plan with you unless she gives permission. I understand, but if it helps, I'm willing to pay for any treatment she needs. Inpatient rehab, therapy, whatever would help her get better. Mom whirled around to stare at me. You're willing to pay for treatment, but not for her basic needs? I'm willing to pay for solutions, not Band-Aids. Jake looked confused. What's the difference? The difference is that giving Emma money for rent and food enables her to continue making poor choices. Paying for professional treatment gives her tools to make better choices. So you'll help, but only on your terms. I'll help in ways that actually help, instead of ways that enable self-destructive behavior. The doctor cleared his throat. If you'll excuse me, I have other patients to check on. After he left, the 3 of us sat in uncomfortable silence. Finally, Jake spoke. Sarah, if you're serious about paying for Emma's treatment, that would be huge. I'm serious, but I won't pay for anything unless she agrees to follow through with the entire program. No dropping out halfway through, no making excuses, no expecting me to also cover her living expenses while she's in treatment. That seems reasonable, Jake said quietly. Mom, however, was still angry. So Emma has to jump through hoops to get help from her own sister? Mom, Emma has to commit to getting better if she wants help getting better. That's not jumping through hoops. That's taking responsibility. And what about the rest of us? What about our problems? What about them? Are you going to help us too? I'm going to help you the same way I'm helping Emma, by refusing to enable destructive behavior and offering support for actual solutions. What does that mean? It means if you want help creating a budget and finding a financial counselor, I'll support that. If you want help finding job training programs or educational opportunities, I'll support that. If you want to go to therapy to work on the underlying issues that lead to poor financial decisions, I'll support that. But you won't just give us money? Not anymore. Money without accountability just enables the same problems to continue. Mom stood up angrily. I can't believe how cold you've become. I haven't become cold, Mom. I've become healthy. As I left the hospital that night, I realized something important. For the first time in this whole situation, I had offered help, real help, the kind that might actually make a difference. I wasn't abandoning my family. I was trying to love them in a way that didn't destroy me or enable them. Whether they would accept that kind of help remained to be seen. But I had finally learned the difference between enabling and empowering, between being generous and being used. The next morning, Jake called me. Sarah, I've been thinking about what you said at the hospital. Yeah? I want to take you up on the offer for help, but not the way you might think. What do you mean? I want help figuring out how to be independent. I realize I've never actually learned how to manage money or take care of myself. I've always just asked you to fix things when they went wrong. I felt tears in my eyes. This was the first time any of my family members had acknowledged the dynamic we'd been trapped in. I would love to help you with that, Jake. I also want to apologize. Really apologize. Not just say sorry so you'll give me money. What we did with Grandma Rose's funeral was wrong. What we've done to you for years was wrong. I can see that now. Thank you. That means more to me than you know. I love you, Sarah. Not because of what you can do for me, but because you're my sister, and you deserve to be treated better than we've treated you. It was the conversation I'd been waiting 8 years to have. Which family member do you think will change first? Emma, Jake, or their mother? Jake's apology changed everything for me. Not because it solved all our problems, but because it showed me that real change was possible. For the first time in 8 years, one of my family members had actually listened to me, understood what I was trying to say, and taken responsibility for their actions. Over the next 2 weeks, Jake and I met several times to work on his financial situation. What I discovered was shocking, but in a different way than I expected. Sarah, I need to tell you something, Jake said during our third meeting at a coffee shop near his campus. I never actually dropped out of school. I looked up from the budget we'd been working on. What do you mean? When I called you that day and said I dropped out because you cut me off, I was lying. I was trying to make you feel guilty. Jake, I know it was wrong. I was desperate and angry, and I thought if you believed I was ruining my future because of your decision, you'd give in and start helping again. I sat back in my chair, processing this. So, you're still in school? Yeah, I'm actually doing okay academically. The money problems are real, but I found out I qualify for more financial aid than I thought. I also got a part-time job on campus. Why are you telling me this now? Because I realized that lying to manipulate you is exactly the kind of behavior that got us into this mess in the first place. I felt a mix of relief and frustration. Relief that Jake wasn't actually derailing his education, but frustration that he had lied to manipulate me during one of the most difficult periods of my life. Jake, I appreciate your honesty now, but that lie really hurt me. I was carrying guilt about ruining your future. I know, and I'm sorry, really, truly sorry. How do I know you're not lying now to manipulate me in a different way? Jake pulled out his phone and showed me his student portal. Look, current enrollment, current grades, current financial aid status. I'm not lying anymore. I studied the screen. He was telling the truth. Enrolled full-time, maintaining decent grades, and he had managed to secure additional grants and work-study opportunities. "I'm proud of you for figuring this out," I said finally. "I should have tried to figure it out years ago instead of just asking you to solve everything. What changed your mind?" Jake was quiet for a moment, stirring his coffee. "Honestly, seeing Emma in the hospital, realizing that always having you as a safety net meant none of us ever learned how to actually handle problems. We just learned how to call Sarah. And now I'm learning that I'm actually capable of more than I thought. Getting that job, figuring out the financial aid, creating a budget, it's not as impossible as I always assumed it would be." This was the conversation I had dreamed of having with my family members. Jake was finally understanding that my financial support hadn't been helping him. It had been preventing him from developing his own problem-solving skills. "Jake, I want to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest." "Okay." "The car vandalism. Do you know who did that?" His face flushed red. "Emma told me she was thinking about it. She was really angry and talking about how you needed to understand how much you were hurting us." "Did you try to stop her?" "I should have. I didn't think she'd actually do it. But I should have said something." "Do you think she did it?" "I don't know for sure, but probably. She was the angriest, and she knew where you were staying." I nodded. I had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed still hurt. "Sarah, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Are you ever going to forgive us? Really forgive us, not just be polite, but actually want us in your life again?" I thought about that question seriously. "Jake, forgiveness isn't a one-time thing. It's a process. And it depends on whether people actually change, not just whether they apologize." "What would change look like to you?" "Taking responsibility without expecting rewards for it. Building your own financial stability instead of depending on mine. Treating me like a person instead of like a resource. Including me in family decisions and celebrations. And if we do those things, then we can rebuild our relationship on a healthier foundation." "What about the house?" I had been dreading this question. "What about it? Are you really going to make us move out?" "Jake, I can't afford to maintain a house that I'm not living in. The mortgage, insurance, taxes, utilities, it's expensive. And right now, you're all living there rent-free while I pay for everything. What if we paid rent? With what money? None of you have steady income enough to afford market rate rent on that house. What if we paid what we could afford?" I considered this. "Jake, what do you think you could realistically afford to pay in rent?" He thought for a moment. "Maybe $300 a month? Between me, Emma, and Mom?" "Jake, the property taxes alone are more than that. Add insurance, maintenance, utilities. You're looking at least $1,500 a month just to break even." His face fell. "I didn't realize it was that much." Most people don't realize how expensive it is to own a home until they own one themselves. "So we really do have to move out?" "Yes. But Jake, that's not necessarily a bad thing. You're all adults. Living independently is part of growing up." "But where will we go?" "There are apartments you can afford if you budget properly. There are roommate situations. There are options." "What about Mom? She's older, and she doesn't have job skills." "Mom is 53 years old, not 83. She's capable of working and supporting herself. She's just never had to because first Dad supported her, then I supported her." It seems so harsh. "Jake, what seems harsh to me is working 2 jobs for 8 years to support people who excluded me from saying goodbye to the person I loved most." He flinched. "You're right. I keep forgetting about that." "Don't forget about it. Remember it. Let it remind you why things had to change." After that conversation, I felt more hopeful about Jake than I had in months. He was finally starting to understand the bigger picture. And more importantly, he was taking concrete steps to become independent. Emma, on the other hand, was a different story. She was released from the hospital after a 5-day psychiatric hold, and I kept my promise to offer payment for professional treatment. I contacted several residential programs that specialized in addiction and mental health issues, and I found one that seemed perfect for her needs. When I called her to discuss it, the conversation didn't go the way I hoped. Emma, I found a program that I think could really help you. It's a 90-day residential treatment program that addresses both substance abuse and underlying mental health issues. I don't need 90 days, Sarah. I just need some stability in my living situation. Emma, stability in your living situation won't address the problems that led to your suicide attempt. The problems that led to my suicide attempt were you cutting me off and making me homeless. Emma, you weren't homeless because I cut you off. You were homeless because you spent your rent money on other things repeatedly, got evicted, and never learned how to budget or manage money. That's not true. Emma, I gave you rent money every month for 2 years. Your landlord told me you were consistently late with payments and sometimes didn't pay at all. Where was that money going? I had other expenses. What expenses were more important than having a place to live? She couldn't answer that question because the answer was embarrassing. She had been spending rent money on camera equipment, clothes, dining out, and other non-essential items. The treatment program I found addresses exactly these kinds of decision-making patterns, I continued. It's not just about addiction. It's about learning healthy coping mechanisms and life skills. I'm not going to some facility for 90 days like I'm crazy. Emma, you attempted suicide. You need professional help. I need my family to support me, not abandon me. I'm offering to support you by paying for treatment that could actually help you build a better life. That's not support. That's control. How is offering to pay for treatment controlling? Because you're deciding what kind of help I need instead of just helping me the way I'm asking. I realized we were going in circles. Emma wasn't ready to accept that she had problems that needed professional intervention. She still believed that her issues were caused by external circumstances rather than her own choices and patterns. Emma, the offer stands. If you decide you want professional treatment, I'll pay for it, but I won't go back to giving you money that enables the same destructive patterns. Fine, then don't. I'll figure it out on my own. I hope you do. She hung up on me. 3 days later, I got a call from Aunt Margaret. Sarah, Emma called me asking for money. What did you tell her? I told her I needed to understand the situation better before I could help. She told me a very different story from the one you told me. What did she say? She said, you inherited all of Rose's money, and you're using it to control the family. She said you're making them homeless and refusing to help Emma, even though she's suicidal. I sighed. And what do you think? I think Emma is in a lot of pain and she's not thinking clearly. But I also think she's learned some unhealthy patterns from your mother about how to get what she wants. What do you mean? Margaret, your mother has always used guilt and manipulation to get people to do what she wants. Emma seems to have learned those same tactics. So, what did you tell Emma? I told her I'd help her find resources for addiction treatment and job training, but I wouldn't give her cash. She got angry and hung up on me too. I'm sorry she dragged you into this. Don't be sorry. I'm glad you told me what was really happening. Otherwise, I might have enabled her the same way you were enabling the whole family. That conversation made me realize something important. Emma wasn't just struggling with addiction and mental health issues. She was also struggling with the same entitlement and manipulation tactics that had characterized our family's treatment of me for years. Meanwhile, Mom was taking a completely different approach. Instead of asking me for help or even speaking to me directly, she was conducting a full-scale campaign to turn the extended family against me. I found out about this when my cousin Lisa called me. "Sarah, I'm getting some really disturbing calls from Aunt Margaret." "My mom?" "Yeah. She's calling everyone in the family, telling them that you've gone crazy with power and you're destroying the family out of spite." "What specifically is she saying?" "She's saying that Rose left you everything because you manipulated her, and now you're using that money to control everyone. She's saying you've become vindictive and cruel, and that you're punishing the whole family because of some minor disagreement about funeral arrangements." I felt exhausted just hearing this. "Lisa, do you want to know what actually happened?" "Yes, I do, because some of the things she's saying don't make sense." I spent an hour walking Lisa through the real story. The years of financial support, the exclusion from Grandma Rose's funeral, the lies about why I wasn't there, the discovery of Mom's theft from Grandma Rose's accounts, and the decision to stop enabling everyone's financial irresponsibility. Oh my God, Sarah, I had no idea. Most people don't, because I never complained about it. I just quietly handled it. And you were excluded from Rose's funeral? That's awful. It was the most hurtful thing that's ever happened to me. Sarah, I have to tell you something. Your mom called me asking for money. She said you'd cut her off and she was going to be homeless. What did you tell her? I was going to send her some money, but now that I understand the situation, I'm not going to. Lisa, do whatever feels right to you. I'm not trying to turn family members against each other. No, Sarah, you're right. Giving her money would just enable the same patterns. If she's really in trouble, she needs to learn how to handle it herself or ask for help with solutions, not just money. Over the next week, I got similar calls from 3 other cousins, 2 aunts, and an uncle. Mom had called all of them with her version of events, asking for money and trying to turn them against me. But instead of just believing her story, most of them called me to hear my side. And when they heard the truth, they were appalled by how I'd been treated. Uncle David put it best. "Sarah, I always wondered why you never came to family gatherings anymore. Your mom said you were always too busy with work, but now I realize you weren't being invited." I wasn't. And when I was invited, it was usually because they needed me to bring something expensive or contribute money for a group gift. That's not how family should work. No, it's not. What can we do to help? Just remember that there are always 2 sides to every story. And maybe include me in family events sometimes, as a person, not as a checkbook. Of course, you're always welcome. These conversations were healing in a way I hadn't expected. For years, I had felt isolated from my extended family because my immediate family had painted me as too busy or too work-focused to participate in family activities. Learning that my cousins, aunts, and uncles actually wanted me around, for me, not for what I could provide, was incredibly validating. But Mom's campaign wasn't just about money. She was also trying to contest Grandma Rose's will. Ms. Martinez called me with an update. "Mrs. Henderson, your mother has hired an attorney and is attempting to challenge your grandmother's will. On what grounds? She's claiming that your grandmother was mentally incompetent when she made the will and that you exerted undue influence over her. Can she win? Absolutely not. We have extensive documentation of your grandmother's mental competency, including evaluations from 3 different doctors. We also have detailed records showing that your grandmother initiated all the changes to her will without any input from you." "So, why is she doing it?" "Probably hoping to pressure you into a settlement. Legal challenges are expensive and emotionally draining, even when you know you'll win." What should I do? Fight it. Don't give in to this manipulation tactic. How long will it take? Probably 6 to 9 months, but it could be longer if she's determined to drag it out. I felt a familiar knot in my stomach. Even in death, Grandma Rose was being dragged into my family's dysfunction. Even after everything that had happened, Mom was still trying to manipulate and control the situation. That night, I called Jake to tell him about the legal challenge. She what? Jake sounded shocked. She's trying to contest Grandma Rose's will. She's claiming that I manipulated Grandma Rose into changing it. That's crazy, Sarah. Grandma Rose was sharp as a tack right up until she died. I know that, and you know that, but Mom is desperate. Sarah, I need to tell you something. What? Mom asked me to support her legal challenge. She wanted me to sign a statement saying that you had been manipulating Grandma Rose. And I told her no. I told her that I remembered Grandma Rose being perfectly clear about her thoughts on the family's financial situation. I also told her that trying to overturn Grandma Rose's last wishes was disrespectful to her memory. How did she react to that? She got really angry. She said I was choosing you over family. Jake, I'm sorry she put you in that position. Don't be sorry. I'm glad I finally know the difference between choosing someone and enabling someone. What do you mean? I realized that choosing to support Mom's legal challenge would be enabling her refusal to take responsibility for her own financial problems. Just like giving her money all these years was enabling her poor financial decisions. I felt tears in my eyes. Jake really was starting to understand. There's something else, Jake continued. Emma signed the statement supporting Mom's legal challenge. My heart sank. She did? Yeah. She's really angry at you, and she believes Mom's version of events. What does she believe? She believes that you manipulated Grandma Rose, that you're being vindictive about the funeral thing, and that you're destroying the family on purpose. And what do you believe? I believe that you loved Grandma Rose, that you've been taken advantage of for years, and that you're finally standing up for yourself. I also believe that Grandma Rose made her decisions for good reasons. Thank you, Jake. That means everything to me. Sarah, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think Emma will ever come around? I thought about that question seriously. I hope so, but she has to want to change. I can't force her to see the situation clearly. What about Mom? I honestly don't know. She's so invested in being the victim of this situation that I'm not sure she's capable of taking responsibility for her part in it. That's scary. It is. But Jake, you can't control what Emma and Mom choose to do. You can only control your own choices. I know. And I choose to keep working on becoming independent and rebuilding my relationship with you. I'd like that. After I hung up with Jake, I sat in the cabin's living room and looked through photo albums I'd found among Grandma Rose's things. Pictures of family gatherings from years past, holiday celebrations, birthday parties. In the older photos, I was always included, always smiling, always part of the group. But as I looked through more recent photos, I noticed a pattern. I was increasingly absent from family pictures, or when I was present, I was often in the background or on the edges. There was one photo from last Christmas that particularly struck me. It was a group shot of the whole family around the Christmas tree. Everyone was there: Mom, Jake, Emma, various aunts, uncles, and cousins. I was standing at the very edge of the frame, barely visible, while everyone else was clustered together in the center. I remembered that day I had bought presents for everyone. As usual, I had contributed money for the big family dinner. But when it came time for photos, somehow I ended up on the sidelines. Looking at that photo now, I could see the physical representation of my emotional experience with the family. I was present, but not truly included. I was contributing, but not valued. I was part of the group, but separate from it. That photo crystallized something for me. This pattern hadn't started with Grandma Rose's funeral. The exclusion, the taking for granted, the treating me as a resource rather than a person, it had been going on for years. I had just been too busy being grateful to be needed to notice that I wasn't actually wanted. Grandma Rose had seen it, though. She had watched me become increasingly marginalized in my own family, and she had given me the tools to break free from that dynamic. For the first time since this whole ordeal began, I felt truly at peace with my decisions. I wasn't destroying my family. I was refusing to continue participating in my own marginalization. The next morning, I made a decision that surprised even me. I called Ms. Martinez and told her I wanted to make an offer to settle the legal challenge. "Mrs. Henderson, you don't need to settle. You'll win if this goes to court." "I know, but I don't want Grandma Rose's memory dragged through months of legal battles." "What kind of settlement are you thinking?" "I want to offer Mom exactly what she would have received if she hadn't stolen money from Grandma Rose's accounts." "Which is nothing." "Right, but I'll frame it as me being generous by not pursuing criminal charges for the theft." "That's actually quite clever." "I also want to accelerate Jake and Emma's inheritances, so they get their $5,000 now instead of waiting for the estate to be fully settled. And in exchange, they drop the legal challenge and sign agreements not to contest any future estate decisions. I think that's a reasonable offer." 3 days later, we presented the settlement offer to Mom's attorney. The terms were simple: drop the legal challenge, and I wouldn't pursue criminal charges for the $12,000 she had stolen from Grandma Rose's accounts. Jake and Emma would receive their inheritances immediately. Mom's attorney called back the same day. "Your mother wants to counteroffer." "What does she want?" "She wants $50,000 and the right to remain in the house for 2 years. I almost laughed. Even when she had no legal standing, even when she was facing potential criminal charges, Mom was still trying to manipulate the situation to her advantage. "Counteroffer declined," I told Ms. Martinez. "Original offer stands for 48 hours, then it's withdrawn." 2 days later, Mom's attorney called back. She had accepted the settlement. Just like that, it was over. No more legal challenges, no more drama. No more attempts to overturn Grandma Rose's wishes. Jake and Emma would each receive $5,000, enough to help them get started independently, but not enough to solve all their problems for them. Mom would receive nothing, but she would avoid criminal prosecution for theft. And I would finally be free to live my own life without the constant weight of everyone else's financial problems on my shoulders. The hardest part was over, but the real healing was just beginning. What's the biggest lesson you've learned about the difference between helping and enabling? If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more real-life stories. Comment below and tell me about a time you had to choose between keeping peace and protecting yourself. I read every single comment, and your experiences help others going through similar situations.